Morning, everybody. It's really good to be with you. I just need to offer a disclaimer. I'm not quite yet a reverend. I'm training to be a reverend. I'm God willing, 2021 is my time when I will be the Reverend Dean. But you know what? I was born Dean and I'll die Dean. Rev is just a title. So good morning. I was thinking about this title, about the power of focus, finishing what you started. And I was thinking about the arts particularly, and wanted to share with you a few thoughts that I had. But a tune was in my head this morning that I couldn't escape, that I want to play to you later on, and maybe we can get down in our chairs. From Gladys Knight, "Come back and finish what you started. Don't leave me hanging on," is the tune back in the 70s when I was a little youth. And it's just an amazing, those old tunes that your parents used to play to you, and you think, what's that all about? And then I think of my children's generation. I have two children. I've worked with young people for a lot of my time on this earth. And one of the best films that I saw, Disney films, was Finding Nemo. And there's that scene with the turtles, and they're kind of lost, and they're trying to find their way to Sydney, Australia, leaving their reef to find this missing Nemo. And they meet this bunch of turtles. And the turtle in their dude crush says, "Focus, dude. Focus, dude." And that was a memorable scene for me. So whatever's happening in your life at the moment, we're going to just explore the focus and see where that takes you. I love movies, I love films, I love music. Arts should be one of the touchstones we have as a community. Wherever you find yourself in culture, our longings, our desires are spoken through arts. And you're thinking to yourself, what on earth has this got to do with focus, man? What's this big up that Mike's been giving? But actually it's really important, because sometimes we are what we see. Sometimes we are what is visualized. And I don't know about you, but I've been intrigued by the series on BBC One to BBC Two on Sunday nights, Small Acts, and the director, Steve McQueen. And I don't know whether many have been watching it. Well, first we had The Mangrove 8, then we had Lovers Rock, and then we just had the most interesting one, Red, White and Blue, the latest offering about Detective Superintendent Leroy Logan and his early life in the Metropolitan Police. And I thought we would start there for this conversation. I don't know how many of you saw it, but if you did, it was quite profound. And what I love about these Steve McQueen small things is his focus is on the Black community, telling the Black community's story as he wants to tell it as a storyteller. I think that's really important. So his focus is not about other people. His focus is about telling a story of different people, how they experience Black life in the United Kingdom. And boy, is it welcome at this time, particularly post George Floyd and the pandemic of 2020. So Leroy Logan, played by the actor from Peckham, John Boyega, who is of Star Wars fame, Finn. If you ever watch those things, I do quite frequently. We see the story document his early years of wanting to be a change agent in the Metropolitan Police Force. What a team. And so Leroy is focused, and his focus comes from a tragedy, a personal tragedy. His focus comes from the fact that his father, as a lorry driver, is beaten and assaulted in a road. And he has to see that painful moment of seeing this grown Black man whom he loves, who he comes from, be absolutely desecrated. A man who's made in the image of God, a man of deep respect. And then he's confronted with his son, who's already got a good job. And it was really amazing as I watched this, seeing a Ford Capri again. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, this Ford Capri car. My focus was lost on all the little bits and pieces that I saw and the attention to details. And he was driving around in his Ford Capri. He was a lab technician. He was all of these things. He didn't really need to go on the beat. It was a come down for him. But that incident and that moment sharpened his focus even wider to make a contribution. His father, naturally, like any good parent, is concerned about his well-being. After having a brutal assault at the hands of police, I heard a lot of kissing teeth in that whole storytelling. The father just looking at his son thinking, what are you doing? It's wonderful to see the encouragement that he gets from Lee John's mother. Some of you may know who Lee John is. If you are as old as I am, unfortunately, you will know about Lee John and Imagination. And you will know about Lee John's journey as well. And even Lee had to look at Leroy and think, what is going on here? I was going to come out with some patois there. What a one. And so it was quite incredible to see that dialogue between two friends. How are you going to negotiate it? But Leroy is focused on being the face of the Metropolitan Police as a black man. You see him going through all sorts of stuff. The physical training. You see him trying to make friends. You see him being racially assaulted. You see him being ostracized by his own community. You see him not having backup. You see all of these things. And yet the focus is clear. He's there to fulfill a calling, a pathway, a career pathway. You may say he even overperforms and is exceptional in what he is trying to do. In the midst of all of this wonderful storytelling, I'm then distracted. I'm trying to keep my focus on Leroy, but I'm distracted by a whole load of songs and tunes that evoke memories for me. Al Green was the soundtrack. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? When I start hearing, how can you mend a broken heart? Which evokes feelings of a father's love for his son. But I wanted to ask you the question, is what you're doing now worth it? If it is, what drives you to go on, especially when you are set back? I wanted to ask Leroy this question. What kept his focus? What was the underlying power that drove him on despite the challenges of overt, covert racism, family hostility, friendship hostility, stuff that probably can impinge on your relationship with your partner, your significant other? What was that all about? And those are the questions that I wanted to ask more of, that I didn't quite see, but I knew there are other people involved. And then there's the other word in your question, Mike, that you talked about, power. Power is one that many of us do not necessarily tap into for various reasons. It may be the way power has been used on you as an individual, or in your workplace, or your setting, or even in your community. And that space of community that is sacred to most of us, which is even our own homes. How is the power exercised? What do we say to some people where powerlessness is part of the underlying narratives, both historically and internally? What stops our power? Where is our focus? If you know, many though who struggle with addictions are known to focus on a higher power, whatever that is to them. And this focus helps them focus internally, to take steps to manage sobriety and not be overcome by the addiction in whatever form it finds itself. Something that came to me as I've been reflecting on this is one of the things that is key is that we cannot do these things alone or solo. Dare to be a Daniel, but dare not stand alone, is the old hymn. And many of us think we can fly solo and we can hustle solo. I'm not so sure about that. Because even the best of us need input from one person accompanying us or a community. And that's one of the things I picked up in this series of Small Acts about community. It's not just the single characters that you see before you. You may have guessed I'm a Christian. And so my focus is the person and work of Jesus Christ and the power that God has given, I believe, through the sustaining life force of God that presents itself through work in individuals and then as a collective in community, which is called church for some of us. For me, an individual's power can only fully be released by enabling good, or else the flip side of that and the shadow side of that is the whole thing about being complicit for bad. And we see that exercised before our very eyes in this season. People help individuals to have more power. Whether you be a politician, whether you be a leader in the church, whether you be a leader or a supervisor in your workplace, you have to work in community and negotiate that community space and what that looks like for you. But you can either do that for good or for bad. Sometimes the focus, I believe, is not the same for the leader or the followers. But when it is, it can be extremely potent for good and bad, especially around issues around justice and injustice. Let me go a bit further about the word focus for those of us who wear eyeglasses. I see those people with eyeglasses and I feel you. Or contact lenses if you're a bit more vain or can do that with your eyes. Focus is important. As I've gotten older, I need a little assistance, as you can see here. And I had to give way to the vanity of myself. My glasses aren't the coolest in the world. Do forgive me for that. However, glasses are only useful if the lenses are attuned to any deficits to gain focus and clarity. Our lenses, whether being cultural, spiritual, or social, are really, really important. And sometimes we get distracted by what some coaches call the wavy people, the wavy things, that we kind of get wrapped up in those. I want to say, focus on what you need to focus on. In your conversations with people, focus is about being present. Ask yourself the question, what various ways are you being present to yourself, to your significant inner community, and your wider community? It is important that our boundaries are clear, that we not only help ourselves, but others who encounter and travel with us. My final thoughts before I open up to you all is, it's often said that we need to focus with the end in mind. None of us likes to talk about endings. None of us. None of us want to talk about the end of our journeys in life. I don't, even though I'm in the business of talking about eternal life. And so I've got some more work to do there. Endings can fill us with fear. No one wants to think about ending, especially after starting. But you need to start with the end in mind for most things. The best planners I know start from a backwards movement to where they be. Those who just react, it's always stressful in my experience. So if you're planning to do something, you need to plan and say, well, what's the end date here? Even if it's about an application form. If it's about arranging a big, significant gathering, even with COVID around. Think about the end in mind. Even think about the ending of this time of COVID. I don't think we've got a proper exit strategy on what I've observed. In what does the ending of this time look like? Are we going to all shock out and have a massive party and have a massive hangover? I don't know. Are we going to go and get on our planes and go and see our significant others abroad if we have a diasporan experience? I don't know. But one of the things I've noticed is that we're not thinking about the end in mind. It is said, even the longest day must end. This has been our longest night for living memory. But it will end. Friends, can we focus with the end in mind? I finish and say this. There's this guy called St. Paul in the scriptures, and he was a main protagonist for the Christian church. Some of you may have heard of him. He was originally from the Jewish community, and he still was a Jew, but he had a fantastic turnaround experience of seeing Jesus Christ. But he used to write to lots of churches back in the day, or what we would send emails now, or Instagram messages or whatever. And what's great is he says this: forgetting the past, I set my mind to what is ahead. In other words, be focused. Don't keep looking over your shoulder. There's a future. So friends, as Gladys Knight said, come back and finish what you started, and be focused and know your own power, and be a positive contribution to those whom you love, those whom you serve, and those whom you are yet to influence. Thank you for listening.